Welcome to the Pencil Bob channel. I hope you enjoy my stories. Please like and subscribe, and hit that notification icon so you never miss out. Now on with the stories.
HOA tanked my condo sale. I'm sitting here, stewing in a mix of frustration and sheer disbelief. Not really expecting this rant to change anything, but I need to get it out. After years of wrestling with the HOA to manage our building properly, I reached my breaking point. They were so utterly useless and infuriating that I made the tough decision to sell my condo, even if it meant giving up my incredible 2.1% interest rate on my mortgage. That wasn't an easy call, believe me, but when you've dealt with a circus like this for as long as I have, you hit a wall. I'd put so much time, effort, and money into the place to make it as appealing as possible, prepping it for sale. Fresh paint, new appliances, every little detail. I wasn't just trying to sell it. I wanted to get the best deal I could. And it worked. Kind of. I got a great offer, above the asking price, and I was feeling pretty good. I thought I was home free, with only 2 weeks to go until closing. 2 weeks? That's when the nightmare really ramped up. Of course, the HOA, because what else would they do? Suddenly decided it was the perfect time to raise the maintenance fees and slap on a special assessment. Not in January when the budget was supposed to be finalized according to the bylaws. Oh no, that would have been too logical. Instead, they waited until the most inconvenient moment possible, just before I was about to hand over the keys. As if they couldn't have been any more incompetent or ill-timed, they proved me wrong. It wasn't like I hadn't seen their sloppy management coming from a mile away. The board was a revolving door of people who had no clue what they were doing, or worse, didn't care. I'd been to the meetings. I'd been to plenty of meetings. The tension in the room was always thick, people shouting over each other, a couple of board members pretending to listen, scribbling in their notebooks like it mattered. They would promise change, assure us that things were being looked into, but then weeks would pass, and nothing would happen. Same old, same old. So when they pulled this stunt, I shouldn't have been shocked, but it was like a gut punch I hadn't seen coming. I tried to smooth things over with the buyer. We even offered them a credit to cover the increase in the special assessment. That should have been enough, right? But no, the buyer got spooked, not by the condo, but by the HOA's complete incompetence. They didn't want to be stuck dealing with this mess, and honestly, I couldn't blame them. They pulled out of the deal, leaving me scrambling just as we were literally packing up boxes, ready to move out. I couldn't believe it. I mean, who cancels a contract because of an HOA? It wasn't even the money that killed the deal. It was the sheer lack of faith in the HOA to do their job. How bad does an HOA have to be for someone to run from a deal that good? Apparently, this bad. And now here I am, sitting in the wreckage of what should have been a done deal, with a mortgage to pay on a place I don't even want to live in anymore and rent on the new place we're supposed to be moving into. It feels like being trapped in quicksand. No matter how much I try to pull myself out, the situation just gets worse. The worst part, it feels like the HOA doesn't even care. There's no accountability. They just make these arbitrary decisions with zero regard for the people who actually live in the building. I tried to bring it up, tried to reason with them, but it's like talking to a brick wall. They don't even respond half the time. It's like they've made themselves untouchable. No matter what they screw up, they just go on their merry way, making things harder for everyone else while they collect their little fees and act like everything is fine. I remember the first time I realized just how bad it was. There was this one board member, Steve, who was supposed to be in charge of maintenance. He'd always talk a big game at meetings, making these grand promises about how things were going to improve. We're going to get this building in shape, he'd say, puffing out his chest like some kind of hero. But every time something actually needed fixing, you'd be lucky if you even got a response. The roof had a leak for months. The hallway lights were out half the time. It was like living in a third-rate hotel, but we were all paying top dollar for the privilege. Steve was the king of empty promises, always deflecting blame or coming up with excuses. One time, I cornered him after a meeting, trying to get a straight answer about when the repairs were going to happen. His response, "We're working on it." That's it, just the same tired line he always gave, as if repeating it enough times would somehow make it true. The HOA's incompetence didn't stop with just maintenance, though. Their financial management was a complete disaster, too. Every year they'd somehow blow through the budget and then come back to us with their hands out, asking for more. The worst part was that nobody seemed to know where the money was actually going. There was no transparency, no clear breakdown of expenses, just vague numbers thrown at us in the meetings, with a shrug from the treasurer as if that explained everything. And now, with this sale falling through, it feels like I'm paying the price for their years of mismanagement. I've never been this furious. I want it out. I need it out. But here I am, still stuck in this place, still having to deal with this joke of an HOA. Moving out was supposed to be the start of something new, something better. We had plans, a whole new chapter waiting for us. And instead, it's just more of the same, dragging us back into a situation we thought we'd escaped. It's like the HOA has a hold on us, refusing to let go, making everything harder than it needs to be. At this point, I don't even know what to do. The buyer is gone, the condo is still ours, and I'm left holding the bag for both mortgage and rent. The stress of juggling it all is unbearable. Every time I look at my bank account, it feels like a ticking time bomb, just waiting to explode. And for what? Because a group of people couldn't be bothered to do their job properly. Because they couldn't follow their own damn bylaws? I thought maybe we could relist the condo, try again, but who's going to want to buy a place in a building with an HOA like this? The word's out now. That buyer is probably telling everyone they know about how the HOA is running the place into the ground. The longer this drags on, the harder it's going to be to sell. And I'm stuck, watching my plans unravel because of their incompetence. Screw HOAs. I don't know how else to say it. It's just endless frustration, and there's no way out of it. We've been trying to get the roof on our duplex repaired for 2 years now. The next door unit spent over $10K fixing the interior because of water damage caused by the roof. Bylaws state anything interior is our problem. Still hasn't been fixed. All of the board members got their roofs replaced at the start of the project. My neighbor is taking a huge hit on the sale of his condo because the roof hasn't been fixed. If the roof is the responsibility of the HOA and the failure of the roof caused damage to your neighbor, that sounds like the HOA's problem. Trying to assign it to the neighbor is like the HOA placing explosives on the roof and then telling the residents that they have to pay for the damage to their apartments because, hey, interior is your problem. I'm in a similar situation with my HOA. I live in SW, Florida. Hurricane Ian bore down pretty hard in my area September 2022. The HOA took 18 months to replace our roof. Surprise, surprise, I have mold everywhere. I have done my part. Got an environmentalist report, $600 out of my pocket. 3 quotes for mold remediation. All 3 around the same price point, $28,000. My personal insurance denied my coverage, stating the HOA is responsible. I have emailed the HOA and management company many times asking for them not to come out of their pocket but to include my damage to their master policy. Their claim is still open. They refuse to take any responsibility. On top of that, I have code enforcement from my city threatening to fine me $200 per day if I don't get the damaged drywall repaired by September 2024. Roof equals common element drywall equals HOA's responsibility. This is not a me problem. This is a HOA problem. I'm completely backed into a corner, waiting on the denial letter from my HOA insurance. Have all the receipts ready for my lawyer. I feel for you and everyone going through this. If you like our stories, then please like and subscribe and comment, and remember to hit that bell icon so you never miss out. We have new stories almost every day. When we first decided to build a rental house on our property, I didn't realize just how deep the resentment ran with some of the neighbors, especially with the longest-standing member of the rural HOA. This guy practically ruled the place, even though he didn't officially hold any title. Everyone knew he had been around forever, and nothing really happened around here without his approval or his interference. He hated the idea of development and renters. Forget it. He acted like renters were some kind of plague on the land. It all came to a head the day we got a frantic knock at our door from someone who lived up the street. Their face was pale, and they were shaking, holding a makeshift bandage around their arm. They told us they'd been attacked by a pack of dogs belonging to the HOA member I was all too familiar with, and it didn't take long before the pieces started to come together. The part that sent shivers down my spine was when they said the dog owner had asked them, "Are you one of their tenants?" before finally calling the dogs off. Apparently, the dogs were meant for our tenants. This poor new homeowner just happened to be in the wrong place at the wrong time. And that's what stuck with me, the intent. The dogs weren't just running wild by accident. This was deliberate. He released his dogs with the idea of hurting someone connected to us, just because we had the audacity to build a rental house. It wasn't like the dogs got out on their own or something. This guy set them loose with the expectation they'd go after whoever he thought was living in our rental. Only, he made a mistake this time. But the dogs didn't care about mistakes. They tore into that poor guy like it didn't matter who he was. They chased him down the road, bit him so badly he needed stitches, and left him bleeding on the street. He was lucky to have made it out of there alive. Of course, he called the cops, and animal control showed up and seized the dog, saying they'd put it down. But here's the thing. He had more dogs. There was always another one lurking in his backyard, barking its head off at anything that moved. And that wasn't even the first time these dogs had caused problems. Over the years, we'd heard stories, neighbors complaining quietly among themselves about how the dogs had chased after them, run after their cars, and even killed other people's pets. But nobody ever did anything about it. Why? Because they were all friends with the dog owner. No one wanted to be the one to speak up against him. He had this way of intimidating people without saying much at all. Just a look, or a little comment, and everyone would back down. It was like he had the whole neighborhood wrapped around his finger. We'd gathered plenty of evidence over time. We'd caught his dogs on camera chasing cars, running wild through the neighborhood, and we'd even witnessed them attacking another neighbor's dog. The poor thing didn't stand a chance, and the owner never said a word. They just buried their pet and moved on, like it was just another day. It made me sick. The worst part was knowing that the HOA member had done this on purpose. It wasn't an accident. He saw someone he thought was connected to us, and he made a conscious decision to release the dogs. What kind of person does that? And yet, somehow, he still sat there in his house, untouched by any of it. Sure, one dog was gone, but like I said, he had others, and he'd probably get more. This was just another blip on his radar. The guy wasn't going to stop until he ran the whole place like his own personal fiefdom. And it wasn't just the dogs that made life around here unbearable. He had this way of manipulating the HOA without ever officially being in charge. Anytime something came up for discussion, whether it was about improving the neighborhood, adding a new house, or doing anything remotely progressive, he'd show up with that smug look on his face and shut it down. No one dared to argue with him, not directly. He had allies, people who'd been here just as long as him, and they all had each other's backs. One time, we tried to bring up the issue of loose dogs at an HOA meeting. You could feel the tension in the room the second we mentioned it. A couple of people shifted uncomfortably in their chairs, but no one said a word. Then, of course, our friendly neighborhood dog owner piped up, acting like it was all some big misunderstanding. "My dogs are well behaved," he said with a grin. "They just get a little excited sometimes." Excited? They were mauling people in the streets, but everyone just nodded along like he was talking about kids playing too rough on a playground. That's how it was around here. No matter what happened, this guy always got away with it. People were afraid to cross him. Maybe it was because they'd lived here so long, and they didn't want to rock the boat. Or maybe they just figured it wasn't worth the trouble. After all, the dogs didn't go after them. So why make waves? It infuriated me, but I wasn't surprised. I knew the type. The kind of person who thinks they own the whole neighborhood because they've been there the longest, like time somehow gave them the right to make the rules. The poor guy who got attacked tried to take legal action, but even then, the neighbors were reluctant to get involved. One person said they'd seen the attack but didn't want to testify because they didn't want to get dragged into it. Another neighbor said they felt bad about what happened but didn't want to ruin their friendship with the dog owner. Friendship? How do you stay friends with someone who lets their dogs maul people? It was like living in some twisted version of reality where none of the usual rules applied. Even after the police got involved, I didn't feel any safer. Sure, one dog was gone, but that wasn't the end of it. I knew this guy wouldn't stop. He hated renters, hated new development, and he wasn't about to let us or anyone else change the way things were. As far as he was concerned, this was his neighborhood, and we were just trespassers. The idea that he could have actually killed someone didn't seem to bother him in the slightest. You'd think that after something like this, the neighborhood would rally together, that people would finally stand up and say, "Enough is enough." But no, life went on like nothing had happened. The neighbors kept their heads down, avoided eye contact, and pretended that everything was fine. And that was the scariest part, knowing that this wasn't over. Knowing that we were still living next to someone who saw nothing wrong with unleashing vicious animals on people just because they didn't fit into his perfect little world. So here we are, stuck in the middle of it. We've got security cameras up now, but what good is that when you're dealing with someone who thinks they're untouchable? Sure, we can catch him in the act, But who's going to do anything about it? The cops? Maybe they'll come by. But what then? A fine? A slap on the wrist? Meanwhile, the guy's sitting in his house, probably planning his next move, thinking about how he's going to drive us out, just like he's tried to do with every other newcomer who dared to build something around here. And the worst part is, there's no end in sight. This isn't something that's going to get better with time. The people who've lived here forever are too scared or too complacent to stand up to him, and the few of us who do speak out are left to fend for ourselves. It's like we're trapped in this never-ending cycle of intimidation and fear, all because one guy thinks he's the king of the neighborhood. And I've got a sinking feeling that it's only going to get worse from here. You absolutely need to invest in a comprehensive security system, and Ring cameras are a great start. Don't just stop at the doorbell, though. Install cameras covering all angles of your property, including the street view. Capturing any future incidents on video could be crucial for legal protection and evidence. As uncomfortable as it might be, you have a responsibility to inform your tenant about the situation. They have a right to know about potential dangers in the neighborhood, especially ones that might directly target them. Have a frank discussion about the incident and the ongoing tensions. Suggest they stay vigilant and take necessary precautions for their safety. While it's a sensitive topic, you might want to delicately broach the subject of self-defense. Encourage them to consider personal safety measures they're comfortable with, whether that's pepper spray, self-defense classes, or other legal options. Their safety should be a top priority. As a fellow dog owner, I completely understand your protective instinct. It's frustrating when authorities seem powerless to help in these situations. Your experience highlights a common issue: the limited legal recourse available when it comes to dog-on-dog attacks. Taking matters into your own hands by carrying protection is a personal choice many make in similar situations. It's a tough position to be in, balancing the love for animals with the need to protect your own. The emotional toll of constantly being on guard in your own neighborhood must have been significant. Your stance on defending your dog is clear and resolute. It's a stark reminder of how serious these situations can become when left unaddressed by proper channels. While it's unfortunate that such measures felt necessary, your priority was your dog's safety, a sentiment many pet owners would share in similar circumstances. There are indeed legal actions and consequences unfolding in this situation. Animal control's involvement and the seizure of the dog are significant steps, demonstrating that the authorities are taking this incident seriously. The potential euthanasia of the aggressive dog is a severe but sometimes necessary measure to ensure public safety. The possibility of criminal charges against the owner adds another layer of accountability. This could serve as a deterrent for others in the community who might consider similar actions. The victim's right to pursue civil action is crucial, offering a path for personal justice and potential compensation. While proving targeted harassment against the landlords might be challenging, it's an avenue worth exploring if there's supporting evidence. Your point about the HOA's limitations is spot on. HOAs typically deal with community rules and property matters, not criminal issues. This situation clearly falls under law enforcement jurisdiction. This case underscores the importance of proper channels for addressing dangerous situations and the potential legal ramifications for irresponsible pet ownership.
I would like to thank you for watching the video to the end. To encourage us to make more videos, please like, subscribe, comment, as well as share. Check out this other video if you haven't already.